What would you do if you found out your wife had a secret online life? And what if you knew she was hiding something worse than an affair? You won't believe what happened when I started digging. I never thought I'd be here, telling my story. I always thought she was the perfect wife, loving, caring, loyal. But there was something off. She became distant, her behavior changed, and then she blocked me on social media without warning. It hit me like a punch to the gut. I tried to dismiss it, but my gut was telling me something wasn't right. It wasn't until I stumbled upon a secret profile that everything came crashing down. A profile I wasn't supposed to see. This wasn't just about some petty disagreement. This was betrayal on a level I never imagined. Before I continue, drop a comment below. What would you do if you caught your partner hiding something from you? I had always believed in love, in loyalty, in the idea that if two people truly cared about each other, nothing could tear them apart. It was this belief that formed the foundation of my relationship with my wife. We had spent years together, building a life that was meant to last forever. From the very beginning, we were inseparable. We had created a world of shared dreams, late-night talks that stretched into the early hours, laughter that echoed through the halls of our home, and those quiet, peaceful moments when we didn't need words to communicate. We were simply content in each other's company. Our love felt invincible, a bond so strong that it seemed nothing could break it. We made promises to each other, promises about growing old together, about making a home filled with the kind of memories you only hear about in fairy tales. We envisioned children running through the house, our own little family full of love, chaos, and warmth. I could see it all in my mind, our future together, so clear, so perfect. It was a dream I clung to with everything I had. For a long time, that dream felt real, solid, something I could count on. I thought it was the kind of love that could withstand anything. But then, little things started to happen, small, seemingly insignificant things that made me question everything. It was almost like I could feel the edges of our perfect world starting to fray, though I refused to acknowledge it at first. A text she quickly hid when I walked into the room. A glance that didn't quite meet my eyes. An odd excuse about staying late at work again. Something that didn't quite match up with the hours she claimed. She would come home later and later, with a strange tension in the air. It was subtle at first, just fleeting moments of unease. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that these moments weren't random. They were signs. Signs of something I didn't want to see. When I would ask her where she had been, there was always that brief hesitation in her voice, like she was searching for the right words to cover up something she didn't want me to know. And I would let it slide, telling myself it was nothing, just my imagination playing tricks on me. I tried to dismiss it all as paranoia, a product of my own insecurities, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was like a knot that tightened in my chest every time I thought about it, but I didn't want to confront it. I didn't want to face the possibility that the life we had built could be torn apart by something so unexpected, so cruel. I loved her too much to believe that something could be wrong. I didn't want to acknowledge the doubt creeping into my mind because doing so would mean I had to admit to myself that perhaps, just perhaps, everything I believed in, the love, the loyalty, the promises, might not be as unbreakable as I had once thought. I didn't want to believe it, but the more I tried to push it away, the more it lingered, like a shadow I couldn't escape. Then came the night that changed everything, the night that shattered the calm I had so carefully constructed around myself. It was a regular evening, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that would have given me any reason to suspect that my world was about to unravel. I was sitting on the couch, absent-mindedly scrolling through my phone, trying to unwind after a long day. The air was quiet, the kind of stillness that makes you think everything is fine when, in reality, it's anything but. I was lost in the mindless scrolling, just passing time, when suddenly, a notification popped up on my screen. It was from her, my wife. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't heard from her much that day, and the simplicity of the message seemed normal. But then something happened that should have been a minor blip, something that, in hindsight, would end up becoming the beginning of the end. I tried to call her back, to maybe ask her what she had meant by the message or simply hear her voice, but when I tapped the screen to dial, the connection didn't go through. The phone just buzzed, and the screen remained frozen. showing no active connection. Confused, I tried again and again, but nothing worked. I told myself it was just a glitch, a bad signal. Maybe she was busy, or maybe her phone was acting up. But as the minutes ticked by, I started to feel a strange sense of unease growing inside me, an unsettling pressure building in my chest. And then, it hit me. I checked her contact again, just to make sure I had dialed correctly. This time, I saw something that made my blood run cold. She had blocked me. Just like that. No explanation. No warning. No fight. She was gone from my digital world as though she had erased me without a second thought. My mind raced, trying to process what had just happened. How could she do that? How could she just vanish from my life without a word? There had been no argument, no confrontation, nothing that would explain such a drastic action. It was like she had made a decision in an instant to sever all ties, to erase me from her life completely, and I had no idea why. It wasn't even a gradual withdrawal, it was like someone had flipped a switch, and just like that, I was no longer a part of her world. I was left staring at my phone, my mind struggling to grasp the reality of what had just occurred. I tried to brush it off, to convince myself that maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she was just upset. Maybe she had been feeling overwhelmed, and in that moment, she did something she didn't really mean. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Something was very wrong. There was no easy explanation for what had just happened. And as much as I wanted to dismiss it as a temporary lapse, there was a gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach telling me this wasn't the end. No, this was just the beginning. It felt like the first step down a path I wasn't ready to walk, a path I couldn't ignore even if I tried. The nagging thought that this moment marked the beginning of something much darker, a storm I wasn't prepared for, was undeniable. Something had shifted, something irreversible. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to uncover a truth that would unravel everything I had ever known. Couldn't let go of it. The silence, the suddenness of it all. It haunted me, gnawing at the edges of my mind like an unhealed wound. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch, an unanswered question that refused to fade no matter how much I tried to push it away. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop replaying everything in my mind. I thought back to all the moments we had shared, all the laughter, all the quiet mornings, the tender kisses we had exchanged. Were they all real? Or had I been so blind, so oblivious, that I missed the cracks forming beneath the surface? Every memory I had, every touch, every conversation, suddenly seemed tainted by doubt. Was it possible that I had imagined the connection we had? Or had I simply refused to see the truth? I couldn't stop myself from digging, from searching for something, anything, that could explain what had just happened. The need to understand, to uncover the truth, consumed me. I went through everything. Our shared photos, the messages we'd exchanged over the years, even the mundane stuff like our old phone bills. I scrutinized every detail, looking for a clue, some sign that could help me make sense of it. And then I found it. It was subtle at first, easy to overlook, but it was there. Her social media activity had completely dropped off. She had vanished from her online world as if she no longer existed. No posts, no comments, not even a like on anything. I went back through her profile, scrolling through the weeks and months leading up to that moment, and I realized the last sign of life she had shown on her accounts was weeks before. She had disconnected from everything and everyone. That was when it hit me. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was deeply wrong. There was no casual explanation for this kind of disappearance. It wasn't like her. She was always the one posting funny memes, commenting on friends' photos, liking pictures, sharing snippets of her day. But now, it was as if she had simply vanished from her own world, as though she had erased herself in every sense, not just from my life, but from everything. And that's when the gravity of the situation sank in. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't feel the weight of it. I realized now, with a sickening clarity, that there was something she wasn't telling me, something she had been hiding all along. But what? What could it be? My mind raced, turning over every interaction, every conversation. The woman I thought I knew, my wife, the one I had shared my life with, was slipping through my fingers, and in her place was a stranger. The more I thought about it, the more it dawned on me that I had never truly known her. Not in the way I had believed. The woman I thought I had shared everything with, the one I had trusted completely, had somehow built an entirely separate world that I was not a part of. Every piece of the puzzle that I tried to fit together only made the picture more confusing. The silence, the sudden distance, the vanishing act. It was all pointing to something I wasn't ready to face. The woman I loved had become someone I didn't recognize, and I had no idea what to do with that realization. The silence after she blocked me was suffocating, like the air around me had thickened, making it impossible to breathe. Every passing second felt like it dragged on forever, each one heavier than the last. The absence of her, the sudden void where there used to be constant communication, became a constant weight on my chest. I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in my gut, the feeling that something was terribly, terribly wrong. It wasn't just the act of blocking me. It was everything that led up to it, everything that had been left unsaid. It was as if some invisible thread between us had been severed without warning, and I was left standing in the dark, trying to piece together a puzzle with missing pieces. I couldn't shake the need to understand, to make sense of it all. I started retracing every moment of our life together, trying to find any clue that would explain her sudden disappearance from my world. Every conversation we had, every smile, every touch, everything had seemed so perfect at the time, so full of love. But now, as I played back those moments in my mind, I began to see them through a different lens, a lens clouded by doubt. The gestures that once seemed innocent now felt weighted with a hidden meaning I couldn't quite grasp. Was I missing something? Had I overlooked the signs all along? I couldn't stop myself from searching. I had to know the truth. It felt like I was on the verge of uncovering something monumental, something that could explain everything. I went through the phone bills, the emails, our shared accounts, everything that had once been an open window into our life together. Every detail seemed to carry potential answers, potential reasons for why everything had unraveled so quickly. I scrolled through our old messages, our pictures, trying to find a crack, a hint, something that would give me a glimpse of what had been happening behind my back. But nothing stood out at first. Everything looked normal, too normal. And that's when the unease in my stomach deepened. Then something strange caught my eye. It was subtle, but once I saw it, I couldn't ignore it. Her social media activity had dropped off completely. It wasn't just that she was posting less. It was like she had vanished from the digital world altogether. No more posts, no more likes, no comments on anything I posted. Weeks went by, and it felt as though she had disappeared, like she had erased herself from every corner of her online life. She had always been active on social media, always checking in, posting pictures from our weekends together, commenting on friends' photos, liking my posts, sharing her thoughts. She was always so present in that space. But now, it was like she didn't even exist. Her online presence had become a ghost, as if someone had pulled her out of the digital world without leaving a trace. That wasn't like her. She was never one to disappear like this, not without a word, not without some kind of explanation. Her silence wasn't accidental, it was deliberate. And that's when the full weight of the situation hit me. There was something more to this story, something I wasn't seeing, something I wasn't being told. I had to dig deeper. This wasn't just about a blocked phone number or a few missed messages. This was about a life, a relationship, that had been turned upside down without my consent. There were things hidden beneath the surface, things I hadn't noticed before, things I couldn't ignore any longer. The woman I thought I knew had become a stranger, and I had to figure out why. I couldn't let this mystery fester in the dark corners of my mind. I had to uncover the truth. No matter where it led, I started doing what any suspicious spouse would do. Looking for hidden clues, secrets, anything that could explain the growing distance between us. The silence, the blocked calls, the way she had vanished from my world. All of it pushed me to dig deeper, to uncover something, anything, that would make sense of the unease I was feeling. I couldn't let go of the feeling that something was terribly wrong, and I couldn't just sit there pretending everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. So I began going through her things, quietly, carefully, making sure she wouldn't catch on. I told myself I was just being cautious, that I was only trying to understand, but deep down, I knew this was crossing a line. I wasn't just being paranoid. I was digging into a life I had once shared with her. A life that now seemed to hold secrets I wasn't meant to know. As I sifted through her things, her drawers, her bags, her personal items, I felt like I was peeling away layers of a person I had spent years with. The deeper I went, the more I felt like I was unearthing a side of her that had been hidden from me all this time. A side that, until now, had been carefully concealed. The first real clue came when I found a hidden folder on her laptop. It wasn't in the usual places I expected to find files. It was buried deep in the file system, tucked away under a name I didn't recognize. Something generic, something that didn't even make sense. My hands trembled as I clicked on the folder, and as the contents opened before me, my heart sank. There it was, right in front of me, screenshots of conversations. Messages, far too intimate messages that didn't belong in a folder that she was obviously hiding from me. Some of the conversations were with men I didn't know. The messages were personal, flirtatious, and so incredibly intimate that it felt like my entire world was shattering in an instant. There was a part of me that wanted to shut the laptop, to close the folder and pretend I had never seen it. My mind screamed at me to turn away, to ignore what I was witnessing. But I couldn't. The urge to know the truth, to confront the reality of what had been happening behind my back, was overpowering. My chest felt tight as I scrolled through the messages, each one confirming what I had already feared, but hoping against hope I was wrong. This wasn't just a random mistake. This wasn't just some harmless flirtation. This was something real, something that had been going on for far too long, and I had no idea. The next morning I couldn't wait any longer. My heart pounded in my chest as I confronted her. I was shaking, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to hold on to some semblance of control. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, yet it felt like I was shouting. My hands were cold, and my mind raced with a million questions I didn't have the answers to. She looked at me, her face instantly hardening, a quick flash of panic crossing her eyes before she masked it with a smile. "It's nothing," she said, brushing it off with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Just a joke. Don't worry about it." But as she said those words, I saw it, the fear. It was in her eyes, in the way she avoided looking at me. Fear that I would find out. Fear that I was about to uncover the truth. And in that moment I knew. The truth was darker than I had imagined. It wasn't just some harmless conversation. It wasn't just a temporary lapse. No, this was something far deeper. Something that had been going on for a long time. Something she thought she could hide forever. But the fear in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. She was guilty, and she was terrified of me discovering the truth. I didn't know what to say or how to react. My whole world was crashing down around me. The woman I had loved, the woman I thought I knew. She had been hiding this from me, hiding another life that I never even suspected. And now I had to face it. There was no going back. The more I thought about it, the more everything about her behavior started to feel off. It was like the woman I had known was slipping through my fingers, piece by piece. She was acting different, more distant, more guarded. The warmth that used to fill the space between us had slowly been replaced by an invisible wall. When we spoke, it was like I was talking to a stranger, someone I didn't recognize. She'd start getting defensive whenever I asked her anything, no matter how casual the question. Her answers became vague, clipped, almost like she was holding something back. She'd smile, but it was forced, a hollow gesture that didn't reach her eyes anymore. And it wasn't just her words, her actions were off too. Whenever I walked into the room, I noticed how quickly she'd turn her phone screen away from me, like she didn't want me to see what she was doing. At first, I told myself it was nothing, just an innocent habit, or maybe she was just distracted. But the more it happened, the more it gnawed at me. It wasn't normal. It wasn't like her. The woman I had loved, the woman who once shared everything with me, had suddenly become this person I couldn't reach, this person who kept me at arm's length. I tried to brush it off, tell myself I was being paranoid. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. It wasn't until one night when I stayed up late that I saw it with my own eyes. Couldn't sleep. My mind was a tangled mess of questions and doubts, each one feeding off the other. I kept turning over every interaction we'd had, every moment I'd ignored. The silence between us was deafening. The trust that once held us together was slipping away, and I didn't know how to stop it. That night, I stayed awake longer than usual, the quiet of the house pressing in around me, making it hard to breathe. It was like I was waiting for something, but I didn't know what. That's when I saw it. The glow of her phone screen in the dark. She thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. I could see the faint light illuminating her face as she texted someone, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. At first, I tried to tell myself it was just a late-night conversation, maybe with a friend or a family member. But then I saw the name at the top of the screen, and my heart sank. It was a secret account. One I didn't recognize, one I had never seen before. My breath caught in my throat as I strained to see more, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt like an intruder in my own home, but I couldn't stop myself. I had to know. I leaned forward, trying to catch a glimpse of the messages as she typed, my mind racing. Each word that appeared on the screen felt like a hammer to my chest. The tone was intimate, far too intimate for a casual conversation. There was a familiarity in her words, something I had never heard before. The kind of language reserved for someone she shared a deeper connection with, a connection I wasn't part of. The messages weren't just harmless exchanges. They were personal, flirtatious, and laden with meanings that I couldn't ignore. It was clear now. Everything I had been feeling, everything I had suspected was true. She was hiding something from me, a part of herself I had never known existed. The woman I thought I had shared my life with wasn't who I thought she was. The trust we had built was shattered in an instant, and I couldn't ignore the evidence in front of me. As I sat there, frozen, watching her messages unfold in the darkness, I realized I was no longer the person she was sharing her life with. I had been replaced. And the worst part was that she thought I wouldn't find out. She thought she could keep it hidden from me forever. But now I knew. Now there was no denying it. The woman I had loved had become a stranger. The confrontation didn't happen the way I had imagined it. I had spent days obsessing over every little detail, mentally preparing myself for the moment when I would finally confront her with the truth. I'd rehearsed the words over and over in my mind, imagining the way it would play out. How I would calmly ask her about what I had discovered, how she would look at me with guilt in her eyes, how everything would finally make sense. But nothing had prepared me for the sheer weight of what I was about to uncover. It all started with the secret account. I knew something was off and I had to find the key. After days of uncertainty and frustration, I had finally cracked the password to her hidden account. The feeling in my gut was a mix of dread and anticipation. My hands were shaking as I typed in the code, my heart pounding in my chest. I clicked the enter button, and the screen blinked. And there it was. Everything. Messages. Photos. Flirting. Secrets. Things I had never expected to see. Things I couldn't unsee. It was as if the veil had been lifted, revealing a side of her that I had never known existed. I stared at the screen, the weight of it all sinking in with every scroll. Each message felt like a blow to my chest, each photo a reminder of how little I truly knew her. My mind went numb as I read her words, words full of affection, words full of promises and tenderness that she had once given me, now spilling out to someone else. My heart twisted painfully as I realized that I had been a fool, living in a lie, blind to the truth. The worst part was seeing the blatant lies. The messages she had sent to him, the way she made excuses for her absences, the way she'd reassured him while lying to me about where she had been. She had been seeing someone else for months, hiding it all behind this so-called private account, keeping the truth locked away while feeding me a lie. She had kept it all from me, living this double life right under my nose. Couldn't believe it. How could she do this to me? How could she have been lying to my face every single day, promising me love while secretly sharing her affection with someone else? Every word, every glance, every moment I thought we had shared together now felt tainted. My heart was shattered, and the trust that I had placed in her was obliterated in an instant. The questions came flooding in. How long had this been going on? Was I really that blind? How could I have been so naive? And then the anger started to build. Anger at her. Anger at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. And yet, I couldn't stop reading. Each message, each photo, each shared secret felt like a punch to my gut. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but something held me back. Maybe it was the shock. Maybe it was the disbelief. Or maybe it was the crushing realization that the person I had loved and trusted for so long had become someone I didn't even recognize. I sat there in silence, the weight of what I had just uncovered pressing down on me. The world felt like it had been turned upside down, and I couldn't make sense of any of it. All I could do was sit there, staring at the screen, trying to come to terms with the betrayal that was unfolding before me. My heart screamed for answers, but the truth was right there in front of me, clear as day. She had chosen him over me, and now I had to face the painful truth. Everything I had believed in was a lie. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I approached her, each step heavier than the last. The truth was out, and I had to face it, no matter how much it hurt, no matter how much it crushed me. I could barely breathe, the weight of the moment suffocating me. My mind kept racing, but my body felt frozen, trapped in the anticipation of the conversation that was about to unfold. Every ounce of me wanted to run, to escape the reality of what was happening. But I couldn't. I had to face it. I called her into the living room. My voice came out hoarse, barely steady. "We need to talk," I said, each word feeling like a dagger being driven deeper into my own soul. She didn't resist. She didn't argue. She knew. The fear in her eyes was unmistakable as she walked toward me, slowly sitting down across from me, her gaze avoiding mine as if she were already trying to prepare herself for the storm that was coming. "I know," I said, my voice trembling. I couldn't keep the emotions from spilling out. "I know about everything. The messages, the photos. The other man." Her face went pale, the blood draining from her cheeks as though the life was being sucked out of her in that instant. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out at first. Her lips trembled, her eyes filling with the kind of guilt that only a secret kept for far too long could cause. I saw her fighting to hold back the truth, but it was already too late. The silence between us felt like a suffocating presence, heavy and unyielding. And then it came, the confession. The words fell from her lips like poison, a slow drip that I couldn't stop swallowing, no matter how hard I tried. "I never stopped loving you," she said, her voice cracking. But I couldn't resist the attention he was giving me. Felt good, like I was wanted again. I just stared at her, my body stiffening as I processed her words. Her confession hit me like a tidal wave, sweeping away any last shred of hope that I had for us. Love? This was what love was supposed to feel like. The pain of betrayal, the sting of lies that I had lived with for so long, the confusion of knowing that the woman I had trusted more than anything had been lying to me every day. I had given her everything. My heart, my trust, my future. And now she was telling me that it wasn't enough? That she needed someone else's attention to feel wanted? It wasn't just the act of betrayal that tore me apart. It was the realization that she had been seeking validation from someone else because what I had given her wasn't enough. Not just the attention, not just the affection, but the love I had so freely given her. None of it seemed to matter. He was the one who made her feel alive, who made her feel wanted. My words, my gestures, the countless things I had done to show her how much I loved her. All of it had been dismissed in favor of someone else's interest. I looked at her, but I couldn't find the woman I had once loved in her eyes anymore. I saw a stranger sitting across from me, someone who had betrayed me so completely that I could barely recognize her. The woman who once promised to grow old with me, to build a life with me, was now a hollow version of herself. I wanted to scream, to shout, to ask how she could throw everything away. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring at her, trying to process what she had just admitted. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. Every emotion I had buried deep inside, every shred of hope, every ounce of trust, was now gone, crumbling to dust in front of me. I wanted answers, but all I could do was stare at the woman I thought I knew, wondering how she had become someone so different. I trusted you, I whispered, my voice breaking. I gave you everything. And you chose him. Her head hung low, her hands trembling in her lap, and I could see the weight of her guilt crushing her. But it didn't matter. Nothing she said now could undo the damage. Nothing could fix the betrayal that had been done. For the first time, I realized how completely lost we were. There was no going back from this. I could feel the anger building up inside me, like a storm threatening to explode. It started deep in my chest, a tightness that spread through my whole body, coiling in my stomach and rushing through my veins. My fists clenched so hard that my nails dug into my palms, and my vision began to blur with rage. Every inch of me was on fire, and all I wanted was to scream, to lash out, to make her feel the pain that was suffocating me. How could she do this? How could she be so cold, so heartless? After everything we had shared, all those years together, all those promises we made, all the memories we built, what were they worth now? What was the point of all of it if it could be torn apart so easily? If she could throw it all away like it meant nothing? I wanted to hurl every word, every emotion, every ounce of pain in her face. I wanted her to see what she had done to me, to understand the depth of the betrayal. But I couldn't. The words stuck in my throat, caught in the chaos of my mind. The pain was too raw, too intense, and it left me feeling helpless. I couldn't even find the words to express the devastation I was feeling. All I could do was sit there, shaking, unable to speak. She saw the rage in my eyes and started begging. Her voice cracked with desperation as she whispered through her tears, "I'm so sorry. Please, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was weak. I was lost. I didn't know how to stop." I heard the words, but they felt hollow. They were just words. Apologies. Words that couldn't undo what had been done. Words that couldn't erase the lies, the deceit, the shattered trust. I had trusted her. I had believed in us, in the love we shared, and now it felt like all of it had been poisoned by her actions. The more she begged, the more she pleaded for another chance, the more I felt myself sinking into numbness. The anger was still there, but beneath it was something colder, something emptier. A deep, suffocating sense of betrayal that I couldn't escape. Her tears didn't matter. Her apologies didn't matter. It was too late for all of that. The damage had already been done. The hurt had been planted so deep inside me that nothing she could say now would ever make a difference. I wasn't sure what to feel anymore. My emotions were all tangled. Anger, confusion, hurt, but mostly a cold emptiness that made me feel like I was floating outside my own body, watching all of this unfold without being able to control it. Everything that I had believed in, the love, the trust, the bond we shared, had been shattered in the blink of an eye. All of it was a lie, and I had been living in it. Our marriage, a facade. The future we had dreamed of, the one we had talked about for so long, nothing but empty promises. And here I was, staring at the woman who had once been my everything, and now she was nothing more than a stranger. A stranger who had broken me, who had stolen my trust, and who was now begging for forgiveness that she didn't deserve. Her voice trembled as she repeated her apologies, but I couldn't hear her anymore. The echo of her words was like a distant noise, something that no longer had any meaning to me. All I could hear was the pounding of my own heart, the blood rushing in my ears, the overwhelming weight of the realization that everything had changed. The woman I loved had been lying to me, and the life we built together had been built on nothing but a lie. And as her words faded into the silence between us, I realized that there was no going back. No matter how much she begged, no matter how much she cried, the damage was done. The truth was out, and I couldn't unsee it. I couldn't unfeel the betrayal, and I couldn't pretend that everything would just go back to normal. The woman who had once been my world was now a part of my past, and the future we had dreamed of, that future was gone, lost to the lies she had told. And all I was left with was the hollow ache in my chest, a void that nothing, not even her tears, could ever fill again. After that night, everything changed. The air in our home felt thicker, heavier, almost suffocating. It was like the walls themselves had absorbed the tension, the betrayal, the shattered trust. I sat there in the silence, my mind swirling in a constant cyclone of confusion, anger, and disbelief. I couldn't escape the images of the messages, the photographs, the lies that were now etched into my mind. Every time I tried to clear my thoughts, the truth would hit me again like a cold wave, leaving me gasping for air. The fight for closure had begun, but it was a battle I knew I couldn't win by seeking revenge. Revenge, what would it really bring? A hollow sense of victory? The satisfaction of making her feel the pain she had caused me? No, I realized, deep down, that this wasn't about retribution anymore. It wasn't about punishing her for what she had done to me. It was about me, about finding a way to heal, to piece myself back together after everything had been torn apart. I had spent so much of my energy trying to make sense of her actions, trying to get her to understand the weight of her betrayal. But the truth was, none of that would matter. No amount of fighting, no amount of pleading, no amount of anger would bring me peace. It wasn't about fixing her anymore. It was about fixing me. I had to decide, once and for all, stay trapped in this toxic cycle of hurt and betrayal, or let go and start over. It was a choice that felt impossible. How could I just walk away from all those years? From the life we had built together? How could I let go of the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with everything I had? It felt like tearing apart a piece of myself. But, as much as it hurt, I knew I couldn't keep living in the shadow of this lie. I thought about all the dreams we had shared, the promises we made, the life we had planned together. It seemed like a lifetime ago. All those moments of joy, those nights when we laughed, the quiet mornings we spent in each other's arms. They were all tainted now. And as much as I wanted to cling to those memories, to try and salvage something good from this wreckage, I knew they were nothing more than ghosts of a life that no longer existed. But I also knew one thing, something that had become crystal clear through all the pain and turmoil. Sometimes healing means cutting ties with the person who hurt you the most. It means letting go of the past, no matter how hard it is, and finding the strength to move forward. The pain was unbearable, but it was nothing compared to the pain of continuing to live a lie. I made up my mind. There was no going back. I couldn't stay in a relationship built on deception, on broken trust, on fear. The future I had dreamed of, our future, was gone. But my future was still mine to shape. It would be hard. It would take time. But I had to find myself again, to rebuild my life from the ground up, to heal from this wound that had cut me so deeply. The healing process wouldn't be quick, and it wouldn't be easy, but it had to start somewhere. And that somewhere was with me. It was time to let go. The love, the trust, the hope, they were all gone. But in that void, I knew I had to find the strength to let go of the past and step into the unknown. Where healing could finally begin, filing for divorce was the hardest thing I had ever done. It wasn't just about filling out paperwork or going through legal procedures. It was about the painful finality of it all. It was the end of a dream, the closing of a chapter that I had thought would last forever. All those years I had spent building a life with her, imagining a future where we would grow old together, share laughter and tears, and face the highs and lows of life side by side. They were all slipping through my fingers, fading into the background like distant memories I could no longer hold on to. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the forms in front of me, my hands shaking as I signed my name. Each stroke of the pen felt like a betrayal to the love we had shared, like I was tearing apart something I had invested so much of myself into. How did we get here? How had everything we once had turned into this? The silence of that moment weighed heavier than any argument, any confrontation, any fight. It was the silence of realization that the life I had once envisioned with her was no longer possible. It was gone, and nothing I could do would bring it back. But as much as it hurt, as much as I wanted to avoid it, I knew deep down that it was the only way, the only path left. Letting go of someone you thought was your everything isn't easy. It's like cutting off a part of yourself that you never thought would be severed. Every part of me, every fiber of my being wanted to turn back, to hold on to the love we once shared, to believe that we could somehow fix it. But I had to face the truth. The love I had, The trust one had placed in her wasn't being reciprocated. It wasn't real anymore, and I had to accept that. It wasn't just her I was letting go of. It was the version of myself that had been trapped in that relationship. The person I had become, the man who had defined himself through his love for her, through the shared dreams we had built together. It was all a lie. And as much as I wanted to cling to those fragments of hope, I knew I had to let go. I had to release the version of myself that had been shaped by the idea of us, because that idea was no longer real. The pain was overwhelming. I felt like I was losing part of my soul. But deep down, I knew I couldn't keep living in the past, in a relationship that no longer served either of us. Staying in that toxic cycle would only destroy me further. It would be easy to blame her, to keep holding on to the anger and resentment. But I knew that would only keep me stuck. The only way forward, the only way to truly heal was to cut ties once and for all. It was time to stop fighting for something that was gone. It was time to fight for myself, to reclaim my life, to rediscover who I was outside of the relationship. There would be days when the pain would feel unbearable, when the memories of what we once shared would hit me like a wave, threatening to drown me in sorrow. But I had to trust that the pain would eventually fade. And in its place, I would find the strength to rebuild, the strength to move forward, the strength to let go and begin again, even if it meant doing so without her by my side. I knew it wouldn't be easy. The hardest battles are often the ones fought within ourselves, and this was no exception. But as I stood at the edge of this new chapter, the reality of it finally sinking in, I knew one thing for certain. This was the only choice I had left. To step away, to leave the past behind, and to find the courage to create a new future. A future where I could heal, and maybe, someday learn to love again, this time without the weight of betrayal holding me down. The road to healing wasn't smooth. It wasn't a straight line from pain to peace. Rather, it was a jagged, winding path that seemed to stretch on forever. There were days when I woke up feeling like a stranger in my own skin, disconnected from who I once was, unsure of what my purpose was now. I had to learn to trust myself again, to trust my instincts, and to forgive myself for the mistakes I had made in blindly trusting her. I had allowed myself to fall into a pattern of dependency, of believing that love could fix everything, that loyalty was enough. But now, I was left to face the truth that not all love is unconditional, not all trust is earned, and not all relationships are meant to last. The hardest part was realizing that I wasn't just healing from the betrayal, I was healing from the version of myself that I had allowed to exist in that relationship. I had built my identity around her, around us. I had tied my happiness, my self-worth, to the idea of our love. And now all of that had been ripped away. I had to rebuild from scratch, piece by piece, until I could find myself again. But slowly, day by day, I began to rebuild. I found peace in small things, working on myself, focusing on my career, rediscovering old passions that I had abandoned for the sake of the relationship. I started to enjoy my own company, to find joy in the moments I once took for granted. I remembered what it felt like to be excited about life, to laugh without worrying about someone else's approval, to dream again. I began to see my worth, to understand that I wasn't defined by someone else's actions, and that my value wasn't dependent on anyone's love but my own. Over time, I began to feel like myself again. The numbness started to fade, and with it, the overwhelming pain. I became stronger, more resilient, more aware of my worth. I started setting boundaries, something I had never been good at before. I became less afraid to walk away from things that no longer served me, from people who took more than they gave, from situations that drained me. I stopped compromising my happiness for the sake of others. I realized that the betrayal, as crushing as it was, had given me the strength to move forward, to rebuild my life from the ground up. And the one thing I promised myself during this process, I would never again let someone manipulate my emotions like that. I would never again allow anyone to make me question my worth, to make me feel small or insignificant. I wasn't going to let my past dictate my future. I was taking control. The scars of betrayal would always be there. They were a part of me now, a reminder of my vulnerability and the lesson I had learned. But they would no longer define me. They would no longer hold power over me. In the end, I came out stronger. The man I was becoming was someone who knew his worth, who wasn't afraid to face the darkness, and who understood that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about learning, growing, and evolving. I learned that even after the darkest moments, there is light, and the only way to find it is to keep moving forward. Healing didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't easy, but I made it through. I found strength in the pain, wisdom in the struggle, and hope in the knowledge that better days were ahead. And in the end, I realized something incredibly important. The only person I needed to rely on for my happiness, my peace, and my future was me. I was enough. I had always been enough. And that was the greatest lesson I could ever learn. If you've ever been through something like this, share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more shocking cheating stories.